Going into my third season after missing the playoffs, I needed to get through the offseason. After throwing for 31 touchdowns and 20 or so picks, I didn't know if I'd still be on the team after this offseason finished. The Giants ended up losing to Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and there were a bunch of retirements around the league, including players like Aaron Donald, Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Chris Jones, Stephon Diggs, Alvin Kamara, and Nick Chubb. A quarterback out of Michigan named Alex Money got drafted first overall to the Cardinals, and with our fourth overall pick, we took Julius Toon, an edge rusher out of Oregon. And overall, we had an okay draft and took an O-lineman in the third round that turned out to have hidden development. There were some elite draft picks though this year, with Emmett Williams being an 83 overall halfback for the Steelers and Joe Baldwin going to the Hawks as an 80 overall receiver. As we headed into the locker room, I couldn't stop thinking about a conversation I had with my quarterback's coach in the offseason. He told me, "There's going to be a game where everything feels like it's falling apart. That's where you'll find out what kind of leader you are." This felt like one of those moments. Nothing was coming easy out there. Every dropback felt rushed. Every throw felt contested. And I was starting to wonder if I'd even get the chance to put it all together before it was too late. Sitting at my locker during halftime, I glanced across the room at Marshawn Ford. He gave me a look, one of those subtle, unspoken messages we've always had since our Louisville days. It said, "We're not done yet." I knew he'd have my back out there no matter what. But this wasn't just about finding a spark. It was about showing that we could rise above the frustration, the pressure, and the noise. It wasn't going to take a single play. It was going to take consistency and grit, drive after drive. The halftime adjustments weren't revolutionary, just small tweaks to get me moving out of the pocket more and leaning on quick routes to keep their defense on its heels. I could feel the weight of the moment, not just for this game, but for what it meant for my growth. There's a difference between just surviving the storm and finding a way to turn it into an opportunity. This was my storm, and I had no intention of letting it break me. The second half wasn't about erasing mistakes, it was about rewriting the story. As I grabbed my helmet and headed toward the tunnel, our offensive line coach caught me for a quick word. "Trust the process, Hinch," he said, almost as if he could see the doubt creeping in. I nodded, but deep down, I was questioning everything. How many more chances would I get to prove that I belonged in this league? How many more games before the front office started looking at me as a liability instead of an investment? These weren't the kinds of thoughts you wanted swirling around at halftime, but they were there. On the field, the crowd noise hit me like a wave, but there was something about the challenge that brought clarity. I jogged over to the huddle, locked eyes with Marshawn, and said, "Let's set the tone, one drive at a time. No overcomplicating it, no grand speeches, just focus." Marshawn's nod was all I needed to feel like we could turn this thing around, and while I couldn't say it out loud, I had a feeling that this game was going to stick with me one way or another. Whether it ended in triumph or frustration, it was one of those moments that shapes who you are as a quarterback and as a leader. Week 8 against the Giants was circled on our calendar from the moment the schedule dropped. Everyone in the building knew what this game meant, not just for our playoff hopes, but for the narrative around this team. The Giants were the reigning NFC champions, and while they fell short to Mahomes and the Chiefs, they had proven themselves as one of the most complete teams in the league, and of course, their quarterback Max Miller wasn't just another player to me, he was the guy drafted the year before me who set the standard for young quarterbacks in our division. Every conversation about NFC East quarterbacks started with his name, and I wanted to change that. The buzz leading up to the game was electric. The media played it up as Miller versus me, a battle of two young quarterbacks vying for dominance in the NFC East, but for me, it wasn't about a head-to-head duel. It was about proving that we belonged, that I belonged, and that this Cowboys team was ready to be a playoff contender again. The Giants had the upper hand in recent years, and while their Super Bowl loss might have stung, it only made them hungrier. For us, this was more than just a game, it was a measuring stick. The week of preparation was intense. We knew the Giants' defense was a problem. They were aggressive, fast, and relentless, led by their all-pro edge rusher, who had made life miserable for quarterbacks all season. Film sessions were filled with clips of him wrecking offensive lines, and I knew I'd have to be quick with my reads and decisive with my throws. On top of that, their secondary was stacked, and turnovers were not an option if we wanted to stay in this game. It felt like every rep in practice had a heightened sense of urgency. I couldn't help but think about my journey as I prepared. Last season, games like this felt overwhelming, but this year I had grown. The game had slowed down for me, and I was starting to feel like I could lead this team against anyone. Still, there was something about facing the Giants that brought out a mix of anxiety and excitement. It wasn't just about the rivalry, it was about the challenge of facing a team that had been where we wanted to go. On game day, AT&T Stadium was rocking, the energy was palpable, and it wasn't lost on me how much this moment mattered, not just for the fans, but for the guys in the locker room. We had a 35-24 lead after scoring with 2 minutes left. With 45 seconds left, we got conservative and failed to pick up the first down, giving the ball back to Max Miller, who engineered a touchdown drive that ran out the clock, sending us home with the 41-35 loss. Even though I outplayed Miller with a 4-touchdown, 1-pick performance, the Giants quarterback showed up when it mattered most.
Fast forward to the end of the season, and I had my best season of my career with 39 passing touchdowns to 14 picks with a 69% completion rate. I also stayed consistent running the ball with another 500 yards and my highest total rushing TD season with 8. Bijan also had a career season with 1,400 rushing yards and 13 TDs. CeeDee Lamb was the leading receiver and Marshawn Ford was our second leading receiver. So here we were, the NFC wildcard, and of course it had to be the Bears, the same team we faced back in week 1 to start the season, but this wasn't the same matchup. Both teams had evolved, game plans were sharper, stakes were higher, and mistakes, they'd cost you everything. It felt poetic, almost like a full circle moment to see them again with our playoff lives on the line. For me, this wasn't just another game, it was a chance to prove that what we'd built throughout the season wasn't a fluke. Marshawn Ford and I had talked about this moment all week, how it wasn't just about execution, but about heart. The Bears had a chip on their shoulder from that week 1 loss, and I knew Fields and their defense would come out swinging. In Chicago, I managed to convert a 4th and inches read option keeper for a game-sealing touchdown. We won 29-24, and I was as close to perfect as you could be with only 5 incompletions and 3 touchdowns without any turnovers while rushing for 100 on the ground. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Just as we were getting momentum in the postseason, Bijan Robinson was ruled out for 4 weeks with a torn labrum. The divisional round felt like an opportunity for revenge. Facing the Giants wasn't just another playoff game, it was a rematch that had been building since week 8. Max Miller, their franchise QB, had been the thorn in our side, and now he was standing in the way of a trip to the NFC Championship. The atmosphere was electric, the stakes higher than ever. Every play, every snap felt magnified under the postseason lights. We were without Bijan Robinson, which was a massive blow to our offense, but Tavon Crawford showed up like a man on a mission. His burst out of the backfield and ability to turn broken plays into positive yardage kept us alive early. He wasn't Bijan, but he didn't need to be. Crawford gave us exactly what we needed, a gritty, dependable performance to take some of the load off my shoulders. The Giants' defense was relentless. They were disguising coverages, sending pressure from angles we hadn't seen before. It felt like every time I dropped back, there was a defender in my face. I had to rely on quick reads, trusting my guys to make plays. Marshawn Ford came through on a critical third down in the second quarter, making a clutch catch in traffic to keep our drive alive. Those moments, those battles within the game were where we proved our toughness as a team. Our defense did its part too, holding Max Miller and their high-powered offense in check just enough to give us a shot. Micah Parsons was everywhere, disrupting plays and keeping the pressure on their O-line. The energy on the sideline was contagious. You could feel the belief building with every stop, every first down. This wasn't just about skill, it was about heart. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, the game was as tight as it could be. Every play was a potential turning point, every decision a gamble. We'd battled, adjusted, and clawed our way into a position to win. And as those final 3 minutes approached, it became clear this game, this season, would come down to who wanted it more. With 2 minutes left, we were down by 1 when I called my own number, audibling into a quarterback draw and diving into the end zone for the go-ahead touchdown. We took our time celebrating the lead in New York before lining up for the 2-point conversion. The Giants sent heavy pressure and I stumbled on the play, not seeing my receivers running over the middle, and I ended up taking a sack. I had hoped that wouldn't haunt us going forward, but Max Miller and the Giants offense took a 29-26 lead. We had one shot with 45 seconds left to either win the game or go into overtime with a field goal. I used every tool in the box to convert first downs, running outside the pocket, throwing pinpoint passes. With 30 seconds left near the 50, I saw pressure coming from my side and got laid out, but before I got hit to the ground, I threw a perfect back shoulder pass to none other than Marshawn Ford, and we were at the 27-yard line. With one timeout left, we tried to get in the end zone to win the game, but we began running out of time and coach called a timeout. With 8 seconds left, we kicked the game-tying field goal and missed. I was sick. Max Miller and I did all we could for our teams. He passed for 3 touchdowns while I passed for 1 and ran 2 in with 130 yards rushing. Crawford also had a good game on the ground. Alex Davis, Marshawn, and CeeDee all contributed. We had to take a hard look at ourselves in the mirror after this season, and I knew I still could be better to take this team over the hump. I just hope the front office still believed in me. Crawford got a development upgrade, and Marshawn Ford made the Pro Bowl. The Giants ending up making the Super Bowl for the second time in a row, and they lost to the Chiefs again.